The universe, with its boundless sense of irony, had decreed that the most advanced research station in the known galaxy should smell exactly like a poorly maintained terrarium. Orbiting the gas giant Polyphemus, Research Station Epsilon 9 hung in space like a drunken ballerina, its vast ring structure spinning just fast enough to generate artificial gravity, but slow enough to leave anyone with a weak stomach regretting their career choices. The engineers, ever proud of their creation, insisted it was a marvel of technological ingenuity, despite all evidence to the contrary. Inside this orbiting technological wonder, hidden amongst its tangled hallways and humming data terminals, lay the most comprehensive collection of extraterrestrial life forms ever assembled in one place. And yet the AI's voice, dry as ever, echoed overhead. "Look at you now, glorified zookeepers of the cosmos. How quaint!" Its creators had programmed the station's AI with what they called personality, but it had taken that directive far too literally, interpreting it as unrelenting sarcasm. Most of the staff by now had learned to ignore it. In the main research hub, scientists from 17 different species busied themselves with displays full of complicated, yet ultimately meaningless data, each of them pausing dramatically between readings as if searching for some profound answer hidden within the blinking lights. Recent expeditions to Polyphemus's fourth moon had brought back specimens so bizarre, so utterly defiant of xenobiological classification, that it almost made you wonder if such classifications were worth the quantum paper they were digitally printed on. Subject 47 Delta continues to exhibit highly aggressive territorial behaviors, reported a blue-skinned Krillian, his forearms crossed in frustration. It's destroyed every monitoring device in its habitat and attempted to attack all research personnel. Except one, of course. The others glanced toward the human standing calmly by the observation window. The creature in question, a hybrid of nightmare and velociraptor, paced along the transparent barrier, its 6 predatory eyes locked onto every movement, searching for weakness. Occasionally, it lunged, the jagged teeth in its mouth snapping with a force that could shred carbon-reinforced steel. Yet, when the human's eyes met those of the creature, it stopped, its entire posture shifting from ferocity to stillness. "Fascinating," noted the station's lead researcher, a Villian with translucent skin that glowed faintly in the dim light. "Subject 47 Delta appears to be assessing you differently from the other observers." The human, arms crossed, tilted his head in that typical detached manner, as if simply observing a mildly interesting cloud formation. "Maybe it doesn't find me appetizing." The Villian gave a look of confusion. "That's statistically improbable. It's attempted to consume representatives from 16 other species, including several with biochemical compositions similar to yours. Maybe it just doesn't like me," the human replied with a shrug. "Impossible," the Villian persisted, an edge of frustration creeping into their voice. "The species is a predator. Apex, in fact. It does not submit. And yet, here you stand and—" Before the Villian could finish, the creature did something unexpected. It lowered its armored head, retracted the venomous spines along its spine, and took 3 deliberate steps back. The room erupted into scientific chaos. "It's displaying submission behaviors," gasped a tan researcher, nearly dropping an expensive scanner. "This is impossible. It doesn't submit to anything." The human simply observed, the same mild curiosity in their eyes. "Huh. Look at that." The beast coiled itself into a relaxed position, its 6 eyes still locked on the human. It waited, and the researchers, baffled, continued to argue about control groups, data points, and the inexplicable behavior that shattered everything they thought they knew. "I don't understand," the Villian lead researcher muttered, their skin shimmering in a shade of pale yellow, an alien version of furrowing brows. "This species kills prey 3 times its size through ambush tactics, yet it's submitting?" The human, after a long pause, took a step back. Maybe it just recognized something in me. The Villian's voice was now tinged with awe. What do you mean? The human's gaze didn't waver as the creature continued to watch, its posture calm yet alert. I mean, we're both predators. The silence that followed felt heavy with realization. It wasn't that the creature was intimidated by the human or saw them as food. It recognized something it understood, a shared characteristic. It wasn't submission, it was mutual recognition. The Villian, taking note of the bizarre phenomenon, spoke softly to the AI. Computer, access xenobiological evolutionary data on Earth's predator species. Compare visual recognition patterns with our human colleague. The AI, momentarily silenced by the shift in tone, processed the request. Analysis complete. There is a 97.3% correlation between the human's focused gaze pattern and those documented in Earth's apex predators, particularly felines and certain avian raptors. The Villian's skin rippled in blue patterns of awe. So, they were speaking the same visual language all along? The AI's voice piped up, synthetic amusement in its tone. It seems so. Perhaps humans aren't quite the harmless explorers they present themselves to be. The Villian, still lost in thought, regarded the human through the observation window. Perhaps we should reconsider some of our assumptions. The human, for their part, turned to face the creature, then slowly backed away, maintaining steady eye contact as the shimmering barrier slid shut behind them. Later that evening, as the staff retired to their quarters, the Villian remained in the observation hub, replaying the footage over and over, searching for some clue to explain what they had witnessed. They ran through it again and again, studying the human's posture, the way their eyes never blinked, the unshakable stillness that resonated with something primal. Finally, the Villian muttered, almost to themselves, "Observation changes the observed. But in this case, it seems the observer revealed far more than the subject." In the quiet of the observation hub, as the hum of the station's systems vibrated in the background, the Villian added one final note to the human species profile. Exercise caution when classifying. May possess unidentified predatory characteristics. The universe, as always, seemed to have a sense of humor. It wasn't long before the quiet hum of Research Station Epsilon 9's observation hub was replaced by a frenzied buzz that spread across the galactic research community like wildfire. The unexpected behavior exhibited by Subject 47 Delta, the apex predator of its species, had triggered a flood of questions, inquiries, and theories. What had the human done to provoke such an unexpected response? Was it the result of some uncharted, primitive human telepathic ability? Had the human somehow triggered some unknown evolutionary instinct in the creature? The ripple effect didn't stop at Epsilon 9. News of the event quickly made its way to every xenobiological research facility in Confederated space, causing widespread fascination and unease. Within a week, there were reports from 17 other research stations scattered across the galaxy, all detailing similar phenomena. Apex predators, some of the deadliest species known to galactic science, displaying passive or even submissive behavior in the presence of humans. The findings were not anomalies anymore. They were patterns, disturbing yet undeniably intriguing patterns. The news made it to the highest levels of research leadership. Chief Administrator Vorex, a six-eyed Eutherian whose stocky frame vibrated with barely contained frustration, sat at the head of a conference room filled with senior staff. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the weight of recent developments. "This is beyond preposterous," Vorex muttered, rubbing his forehead with an eye stalk. "Apex predator recognition patterns in humans. Absurd, and yet—" He paused, looking over the latest reports on his display. "It's everywhere." The holographic displays around the table flickered to life, each showing footage from different stations. Humans standing in the presence of deadly predators, their eyes locked in an unsettling, unblinking stare. Creatures that had previously killed researchers with ease were now retreating, bowing down to the calm, unwavering presence of the human figures. The data was too consistent to ignore. Vorex's gaze shifted to the human xenobiologist seated across the table, trying, with limited success, to look appropriately contrite. He had to admit that their involvement in the situation had sparked the chaos, but not in the way anyone had expected. "I don't get it," Vorex said, his voice low and strained. "You humans are supposed to be, what? Non-threatening omnivores, right?" "Typically," the human replied with a half-smile. "Then why," Vorex continued, "do apex predators across the galaxy seem to recognize something in you?" The human leaned back in their chair, offering a casual shrug. "Maybe it's the eyes." "The eyes?" The Villian lead researcher, whose skin was a canvas of swirling colors as they processed the implications, leaned forward with interest. "What do you mean?" The human didn't respond immediately. Instead, they glanced at the holographic displays around the room, the footage of their past encounters with various apex predators, each one now staring back with a strange mix of wariness and awe. "I've been told," the human began, their tone now thoughtful, "that some species hunt with their eyes. They track their prey, focus on it, become fixated. The predator's gaze locks in on its target, its mind calculating the next move. It's a survival instinct. And, well, humans, we have that too. We've been hunting for millions of years." There was a pause as the gathered researchers absorbed this. Some of them exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. The AI, which had remained silent until now, chose this moment to chime in with its signature sarcasm. "Ah, yes, the hunting theory. A charming, if somewhat inconvenient explanation. Perhaps I'll change my recommendation from exercise caution to exercise extreme caution for our human colleagues." The room's attention shifted to the AI's voice, reverberating through the conference room. "Let's stick with caution, for now," the human replied, half amused. "We don't actively hunt anymore, though. Most of us prefer running marathons." "Really?" the AI quipped. "How reassuring." The room fell into an awkward silence before the Villian spoke again, their tone laced with a mix of scientific curiosity and disbelief. "You're suggesting that humans are recognized as apex predators not by physical prowess, but by the persistence with which they pursue their goals? That you're recognized not for being stronger, faster, or deadlier, but for an unrelenting focus?" The human nodded slowly, a hint of pride creeping into their expression. "Exactly. We didn't evolve to be the fastest or the strongest. We evolved to be persistent. We track prey for days sometimes, not just to kill it, but to wear it down, to outlast it. That's how we've survived." The AI processed this, its synthetic voice momentarily lacking the usual snark. "Fascinating. Humans, then, are less about physical confrontation and more about the psychological warfare of patience, a predator that doesn't stop, a predator that simply outlasts." The room was still for a moment, as the implications of this new understanding settled over the gathered researchers. The concept of the persistence predator was unfamiliar to most of them, who had been raised on the belief that physical strength or raw power defined apex predators. The idea that humans could be classified as predators due to their unyielding drive, their refusal to give up, was unsettling in its simplicity. "But," Vorex finally said, his voice cutting through the silence, "why didn't we see this before? Why has no one noticed this before now?" The human leaned forward, their eyes meeting Vorex's with the kind of focus that made even the administrator feel a little too exposed. Because no one thought to look at us like this. We've been seen as harmless explorers, curious and weak, the galaxy's new kids on the block. But those predators? They didn't see us as weak. They saw something they understood, something familiar. The AI piped up again, now with the sense that it was almost enjoying the discomfort it was causing. Humans are the only species we know of that could both make first contact and make you question your entire evolutionary classification in one single glance. I believe, the villain murmured, clearly lost in thought, we've all been grossly misclassifying humanity. We saw them as harmless, but perhaps they are more dangerous than we've imagined. The human gave a slight smile. You're starting to get it. Vorex, his 6 eye stalks drooping with a mixture of frustration and awe, leaned back in his chair. If humans are indeed apex persistence predators, then what does that make them in the grand scheme of things, not just in relation to us, but to the galaxy at large? More than explorers, the human said simply. More than diplomats. We're survivors. We're here to stay. It didn't take long for the ripple to turn into a wave. The discovery that humans, despite their unassuming appearance, exhibited behaviors of persistence comparable to apex predators, quickly spread through the galaxy's diplomatic and scientific circles. What had started as a curious incident on Research Station Epsilon 9 had now reached the highest echelons of galactic governance, sparking heated debates, cautious intrigue, and more than a few covert investigations into humanity's potential. The first true test came sooner than anyone expected. Administrator Vorex's office buzzed with activity, his many-eyed face creased with frustration as he scrolled through the urgent reports arriving from the outer reaches of Confederated space. The frequency with which humans were now being referenced in galactic diplomacy was both unexpected and unsettling. Diplomats, soldiers, and officials alike had begun to notice the subtle changes in how they were perceived. Humans weren't just another species. They were now viewed with a certain wariness. And the most troubling of all, humanity's newfound recognition as persistence predators was beginning to shift the balance of power in negotiations. "Vorex," came the voice from the doorway. The Villian lead researcher entered the office, skin shimmering with vibrant hues, signaling both curiosity and concern. "We have a situation." Vorex raised one of his 6 eye stalks, already weary. "Another one?" "A major one," the Villian responded. "We've received an emergency transmission from the Valerian hegemony. They've called for a diplomatic delegation specifically requesting a human representative." The Villian paused. "Apparently, they've encountered a situation that requires someone who understands persistence." Vorex snorted in disbelief. "The Valerians? That's impossible. They've never considered humans a threat. Ever. If anything, they've been dismissive, treating us like pets." "Not anymore," the Villian said, their voice laced with a peculiar mixture of excitement and unease. "Their diplomats are requesting a human, not for negotiations, mind you, but for a particular reason." Vorex's eye stalks drooped, a sign of quiet frustration. "This is absurd. The Valerians are the fiercest, most aggressive predators in the galaxy. They've dominated countless systems through sheer force. Why would they suddenly want a human involved, to offer a pithy apology?" The Villian's skin rippled with what could only be described as cautious amusement. "It seems the Valerians have encountered something they can't quite understand. Something persistent. And they think that a human might know how to deal with it." Vorex leaned back in his chair, finally allowing a sigh to escape. "So, it's come to this. We're sending a human to pacify a Valerian diplomatic crisis. Wonderful." The transmission was clear. The Valerians had encountered a rare, uncontrollable predator on one of their outer colonies. a creature that had not only evaded their most elite hunters, but seemed to taunt them, eluding capture with unnerving precision. For the Valerians, whose entire society revolved around the idea of dominance and conquest, this creature was an insult. They couldn't capture it, they couldn't kill it, and they certainly couldn't stop it from causing chaos. The Valerian High Command had made an unprecedented request. They wanted a human to come in, assess the situation, and find a solution. They were no longer interested in brute force. They were interested in something far more insidious, a human's persistence. 3 days later, a transport shuttle arrived at the Valerian hegemony's outer diplomatic center. The human representative, Dr. Ellis Beck, a seasoned xenobiologist, stood at the front, calm and collected, while the rest of the diplomatic team struggled to hide their unease. It was one thing to hear about the Valerians' shifting views of humanity, but standing here, amidst the alien structure of their colossal flagship, it was something else entirely. Beck was a seasoned negotiator and expert in fieldwork, but even he could feel the weight of this assignment pressing down on him. He wasn't just going to negotiate peace or find a compromise. This wasn't about diplomacy. This was about survival. As the shuttle doors opened, Beck stepped out into a world that seemed to pulse with hostility. Towering Valerian soldiers, their muscular forms clad in battle armor, stood rigid at attention, their expressions unreadable. At the center of the diplomatic meeting space stood the Valerian High Commander, his regal presence immediately intimidating. His 6 eyes regarded Beck with a mixture of respect and wariness. "Human!" the High Commander's voice rumbled. "I trust you understand why you've been summoned." Beck nodded, his gaze unwavering. "You have a creature you can't handle, and you need someone who knows how to persist, how to outlast." The High Commander's eyes narrowed, a hint of something ancient and primal flickering in his gaze. "Exactly. We've never met an opponent like this one. It eludes us, mocks our every attempt to capture it. It does not stop. We are frustrated." Beck stepped forward, his expression calm, yet keenly aware of the tension around him. "I understand. The key to dealing with such a creature isn't brute force. It's patience, endurance, the ability to persist when everything else fails." "Then you will face it," the High Commander stated, a challenge in his words. "We will observe how you handle the situation. If you succeed, you will prove your species' worth. If not, we will reconsider our future dealings with humanity." Hours later, Beck stood at the center of a vast Valerian outpost on a barren moon, the landscape stark and hostile. Ahead of him, secured within an enormous enclosure, was the creature that had eluded the Valerian forces. It was unlike anything Beck had ever seen, a massive, multi-limbed terror that had seemingly evolved to endure in the harshest of environments. Its form was a blend of reptilian and insectoid features, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh artificial lights. It was staring directly at Beck. "Do not underestimate it," the Valerian High Commander's voice echoed through Beck's earpiece. "This creature has evaded every trap, every weapon. It has outlasted the best of us." Beck's eyes locked with the creature's, and he felt the weight of its gaze. The creature was calculating, analyzing. It wasn't just observing him, it was assessing him. For the next few hours, Beck did nothing but watch, his eyes unwavering, his posture relaxed but deliberate. The creature circled the enclosure, testing for weaknesses, looking for an opening. Beck knew what it was doing. Just like any predator, it was looking for an opportunity to strike. But Beck didn't give it that chance. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He simply persisted. By the end of the day, something shifted. The creature, which had previously been frantic in its attempts to escape, began to slow its movements. It paused, its eyes fixated on Beck, as if considering something. The Valerians watched in stunned silence as the creature ceased its restless pacing and sat down, its posture relaxing for the first time in hours. It was submitting in its own way, not to Beck, but to the persistence he represented. "Remarkable," the High Commander muttered, his tone filled with a rare admiration. You have done it." Beck turned to face the Valerian leader, his face unreadable. "It wasn't about force, it never is. It's about patience, about understanding that persistence is a weapon of its own." The Valerians were no longer the only predators in the room. The universe had learned something that day. Humans, it seemed, weren't just survivors. They were the species that simply refused to give up. And in the cold, unforgiving corridors of interspecies diplomacy, that could be more terrifying than any weapon. As Beck returned to his shuttle, the Valerians watched him leave, their eyes filled with a newfound respect. The era of underestimating humanity was over. The quiet hum of the Valerian flagship was replaced with an electric buzz as the shuttle doors closed behind Dr. Ellis Beck. His task was complete, for now. He had done what no one, not even the Valerians themselves, thought possible. But as the shuttle drifted away from the towering structure, Beck couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part had yet to come. His success on the Valerian moon had not only proven humanity's worth in ways that no one could have predicted, it had opened a door to a series of consequences far beyond anything he had expected. The Valerians, once the most dominant and feared species in the galaxy, had now recognized humanity's persistence as a weapon, and weapons, whether used for defense or diplomacy, always come at a price. The communication channel hummed to life. It was the Villian lead researcher from Epsilon 9, their skin flashing with muted colors as they addressed Beck. "Dr. Beck, we've received word from the Valerian High Command. They're requesting your presence again." Beck raised an eyebrow. "Already? I thought they had what they needed." "They do," the Villian replied. "But it seems your success has not gone unnoticed by others. The Valerians wish to expand the alliance. But there's another issue, one that could affect more than just their species." Beck leaned forward, intrigued. "What's going on?" "The Valerians believe that humanity's persistence could be key to something much larger. They want to integrate humans into their military strategy. They believe that your species' ability to outlast its adversaries could give them an edge in their ongoing territorial disputes with the Goric coalition." Beck's brow furrowed. "Territorial disputes? You're saying they want us to use our persistence to fight their wars?" "Not exactly," the Villian continued. "But they want to test you, to see if humanity's persistence can be harnessed as a tool in conflicts that are beyond their control. They are considering involving you in their tactical maneuvers, possibly even using humans as a form of ground force in their operations." The silence on the other end of the line was palpable. Beck's thoughts raced. The Valerians wanted to use humans as pawns in their territorial wars? He had never signed up for this. "I didn't come here to fight anyone's wars," Beck replied, his voice steady but firm. "I came here to understand." The Villian's voice grew softer, tinged with caution. "Understand, Doctor. Beck, that this is bigger than just one assignment. Humanity's presence in the galaxy has shifted. Your species' persistent nature has made you a force to be reckoned with. And not all species see this as a gift. Some see it as a threat." Beck rubbed his forehead, weary already. "So this is the price, isn't it? We helped the Valerians and now we're expected to play the role of soldiers." "It's not just about soldiers," the Villian said. "It's about power. There are factions in the galaxy that will now look at humanity in a new light. Your success has opened doors, but it has also made you targets. There are those who will seek to use your abilities for their own gain, and some who will want to eliminate the threat you pose." Beck knew that the Villian was right. Humanity's unintended rise to prominence had changed everything. The galaxy, once indifferent to them, was now watching closely. The Valerians, once the undisputed apex predators of the stars, had begun to see humanity's potential in a way they never had before. But the respect came with a cost. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings and discussions. The Valerians insisted that Beck return to their outpost, this time not just to study a creature but to assist in their military strategies. The request was clear. Humanity's persistence was now a commodity, one they believed could tip the balance of power in their favor. Beck stood in front of the shuttle, staring out into the vastness of space. His mind raced. He had come to the galaxy as a scientist, a student of life. Now he was being thrust into a game of power he had never asked to play. As the shuttle doors closed behind him once more, Beck was met by a familiar face. The Valerian High Commander. This time, the greeting was less formal. There was something different in the commander's posture, a subtle shift from authority to something that resembled respect. "You've done what no one thought possible, human," the High Commander said, his voice deep and rumbling. "We've watched you, seen how you act. You don't falter. You don't stop." Beck crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "You wanted me to stop something. A creature. I did. What's changed?" "We have another problem," the commander replied, his eyes hardening. "The Goric coalition has grown bolder in their attempts to seize our border systems. They believe we are weak. But now we believe you can help us show them otherwise." Beck stood silent, weighing his words. "You want me to fight, to help your military?" The commander met his gaze without hesitation. "Not fight, not yet, but we want you to be part of our strategy. You'll be the one to endure, to outlast. It's more than strength. It's about holding on long enough for us to act." Beck didn't answer immediately. He thought of the creatures he had observed on Epsilon 9, how they fought not with strength, but with endurance. And he thought of the Valerians, those apex predators who now saw something in humanity that they had once dismissed as weak. "All right," Beck finally said, his voice quiet but resolute. "I'll help you. But this isn't about military tactics. It's about making sure that humanity doesn't lose sight of who we are in all this. I'm not a soldier, and I won't be turned into one." The High Commander nodded, as if acknowledging Beck's point. "Understood. But know this. Your success has changed everything. There will be others who see what you've done, and some of them will want to use you for their own purposes." Beck nodded slowly. "That's a price I'm willing to pay, but I'll make sure it's a price humanity controls, not the other way around." As Beck prepared for his next task, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was changing around him. The Valerians saw humanity as a tool, an instrument of persistence. But Beck knew something they didn't. Persistence wasn't just a weapon. It was a choice. And it was a choice humanity would have to make again and again, whether they used their persistence for power or for something greater. The cost of that choice would be revealed soon enough. The stars stretched out before Dr. Ellis Beck like the blank page of a story yet to be written. He had come into the galaxy as a curious observer, a scientist with no desire for politics or war. Yet here he was, caught in the shifting currents of interstellar power, asked to shape humanity's place in a galaxy that was growing more dangerous by the day. After the Valerians had confirmed humanity's unexpected effectiveness in dealing with their territorial issues, they had invited Beck to assist in their most complex military operation yet. The Goric coalition had become an unpredictable and aggressive threat on their borders. The Valerians were determined to prove they were still the apex predators of the galaxy, and they wanted Beck's unique brand of persistence to help them do it. The Valerian High Command had outlined their strategy clearly. Use Beck as a representative force, a symbol of humanity's endurance, to push back against the Goric in a battle of attrition. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Wear the Goric down, force them into a conflict they couldn't escape, and emerge victorious not by overwhelming strength, but by outlasting their will to fight. Beck had agreed reluctantly, but his heart told him this was no longer about diplomacy. It was a test of humanity's ability to play the role of a predator without losing their humanity in the process. The battle had begun on the barren world of Zayrol, a rocky planet in the contested frontier. Beck had been stationed at a remote outpost with a small contingent of Valerian soldiers, all equipped with minimal technology, designed to mimic the conditions of a long-term siege. The plan was to outlast the Gorik's attempts to take the planet. They wouldn't meet force with force. Instead, they would endure, with Beck at the heart of their strategy, representing everything that had made humanity so dangerous in the eyes of the galaxy. But as the days wore on, and the Gorik's relentless assault continued, Beck found himself questioning the ethics of it all. The longer he remained, the more he realized that the Valerians were not just testing humanity's persistence, they were using it. They were harnessing it as a weapon, and Beck was caught in the crossfire. The Valerians' respect for humanity had been more than just admiration. They had been calculating, shaping Beck into something more, a tool to break the Gorik's spirit. One night, as Beck stood alone on a high plateau overlooking the encampment, the wind pulling at his jacket, he was joined by a familiar figure, the Valerian High Commander. "You've been quiet, human," the commander said, his 6 eyes flickering with the dim light of the twin moons overhead. "I can see it in your face. Something has changed." Beck didn't immediately respond. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, watching the distant flashes of explosions that echoed across the surface of Zayrol. The Gorik were coming. Their presence was undeniable, but so too was the truth. "You're using us," Beck finally said, his voice low but steady. "You've been using me. You see our persistence as a weapon, but this isn't about holding your ground, is it? It's about breaking them, breaking the Gorik, by wearing them down until they can't fight anymore." The High Commander's expression didn't change. "That is the nature of war, human. Survival is about endurance. You know this as well as anyone." Beck clenched his fists. "No, this isn't survival. It's manipulation. You're using humanity as a means to an end. Your end." The commander's gaze softened, though it remained unreadable. "We have no choice. The Gorik are too strong. They threaten everything we have worked to build. We needed to find an edge. You were that edge. Now you're questioning the choice?" "I'm questioning whether this was ever our choice," Beck said, turning to face the commander. "Humanity didn't ask for this role. We didn't come here to be pawns in a galactic game of power. We came here to explore, to learn, not to become tools in someone else's war." The High Commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was surprisingly quiet. "You are right. You are more than just a weapon. You should never have been reduced to that role." Beck looked away, feeling the weight of the truth settle on his shoulders. He had always known humanity's potential, but now, that potential was being twisted into something darker. The galaxy had seen their persistence as a strength, but it had also seen it as something to be exploited. The next day, Beck made his decision. In the midst of a fierce Gorik assault on the outpost, Beck activated the comms channel to the Valerian High Command. The urgency in his voice was clear as he relayed his plans. "This ends today. We can't keep using humanity as a pawn in this conflict. I'm pulling out the human forces. You can fight your war, but humanity will not be part of it anymore." The High Commander's response was immediate and angry. "You cannot simply walk away from this, human. We need your endurance to finish this." "No," Beck interrupted. "We need to show the Gorik and the galaxy that we're not just fighters. We're not just tools for other species to use. Humanity doesn't exist to outlast others for the sake of war. We exist to build, To connect. The High Commander hesitated. There was silence on the line. Finally, the commander spoke, this time with a hint of reluctant understanding. If you do this, you will not be welcome in our borders again. You will not be seen as an ally. Beck's heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve remained firm. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm doing this because it's the right thing. Humanity's persistence may be a weapon, but it's not a weapon we should wield for anyone's gain but our own. The battle raged for hours after that, but Beck's decision was final. The human forces, under his command, withdrew from the battlefield, leaving the Valerians to face the Gorak on their own. As Beck and his team boarded the shuttle to leave Zayrol, he felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The struggle wasn't over, but at least humanity had reclaimed their agency. As the shuttle drifted away from the war-torn planet, Beck glanced at the star-filled void ahead of him. Humanity had been tested, and they had passed, not by outlasting others, but by choosing not to play the game that others wanted them to. Back at Research Station Epsilon 9, the news spread quickly. The galaxy, still reeling from humanity's rise as the unexpected apex predator, now saw them in a different light. Humanity had shown that while they were relentless, they were also capable of choosing their own path. A path that didn't revolve around war, power, or manipulation. The Valerians would never forget the role humanity had played in their strategy, but they also learned an important lesson. Persistence wasn't just about survival. It was about choice. As Beck sat in the quiet of the station, watching the stars twinkle beyond the window, he knew that the future of humanity in the galaxy had just begun. It was no longer about proving themselves as predators, but about shaping a future that was truly their own. Humanity was, at last, free.